Good evening and welcome to a 2022 Student Government Runoff Election special with SGTV. I'm Calista Pushman.
And I'm Kronsberg. Tonight we'll be recapping the numbers from the primary election and hearing from the runoff presidential candidates.
We will also be letting you know when and how to vote and where to find more information on the candidates. Now this year we saw two tickets running for the president and vice president positions, those being the Newton-Porzio campaign and the Catalyst campaign. Newton-Porzio had Reedy Newton for president and Maya Porzio for vice president. Their platform stood on 8 pillars, those being wellness, safe, reliable, bright, inclusive, engaging, collaborative, and sustainable. Meanwhile, the Catalyst campaign had Gurujjal Roopra for president and Faith Gravely for vice president. The name Catalyst referred to students being catalysts for change. Their campaign stood on 3 pillars, coined I AM, for innovate, advocate, and motivate. Of course, these weren't the only candidates on the ballot. For the presidential race, we saw Nick Marzullo as an official candidate and Joshua Fair as a write-in. Marzullo used his disconnect to politics as an advantage, telling students he did not fear standing up to those in power because he didn't plan on working for or becoming a political figure. Similarly, Fair had no background in student government and pushed his wishes to combat issues such as racism, parking, and gym hours. The election results were announced this past Wednesday, February 23rd, where we saw Noah Glasgow win his unopposed race for Speaker, Maya Porzio win the vice presidential slot, and the announcement of the presidential runoff race. Will has the breakdown of votes for us. Will?
Thanks, Calista. We're going to go ahead and take a look at some of the numbers from back in the first general election, particularly pertaining to the student body president candidates. So our first candidate, Joshua Fair, now after being disqualified from the ballot, he ran as a write-in candidate, and that's why that asterisk is next to his name. He got 1.37% of the vote, good for 67 total votes. And that asterisk also denotes the fact that on the student government officially released results, they had that at 0.62% of the vote, but SGTV's calculations say that is 1.37%. And then Nick Marzullo, who got 18.9% of the votes cast, about 920 votes in total. Moving to those in the runoff, looking at Gurujjal Roopra from the Catalyst campaign, 32.24%. That's 1,571 votes, only topped by Reedy Newton. Now, Reedy had 46.03% of the vote, 2,243 votes. So a visualization of that data shows that Reedy was here at almost 50%, followed by Gurujjal, Nick, and Joshua on the other side here. And that final little sliver is for votes for unregistered write-in candidates. But if we expand that data out even a little bit more, you'll see that it pales in comparison to the almost 86.3% of eligible voters who did not cast a vote for student body president in that initial election. That's based off of graduate and undergraduate enrollment in fall of 2020. Now that's it for the numbers, but Calista will be sitting down with the two candidates in the runoff right after this.
I am now joined by Reedy Newton off of the Newton-Porzio ticket. So thanks for being here with us tonight.
Yes, thank you so much.
So I'm just going to kick things right off and just ask, how are you feeling going into voting tomorrow?
I'm so excited. I'm feeling great. The energy and the support that I've gotten from so many people is just so encouraging and so refreshing. And so I'm just so excited to have another week to talk to so many different students on this campus, and I'm feeling great.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, why do you think you deserve a vote over your competitor?
I think a vote for me is a vote to complete the ticket for Newton-Porzio, and I think so many students resonated with our platform, and that's clear, as Maya was just elected last week, and we're so excited and so proud of her. And so I think a vote for me would be a vote to complete the ticket, a vote for a better future for the University of South Carolina, and a vote for someone who's going to advocate for the student needs, and I've proven that in my role as Secretary of Government Relations, and so that's why I believe a vote for me is a vote for the student voice.
All right, and you mentioned completing the ticket. So what's the benefit of that, since this past semester we didn't have a full ticket, or this past year, excuse me?
Yeah, I personally, completing the ticket is so exciting to Maya and I, or the opportunity to complete the ticket, because we worked so hard on creating a platform that was unique to both of our passions and the concerns that we both saw on this campus in different roles in student government. And so it would just be such an honor to complete the ticket and have that opportunity, because these concerns that we've both worked on together, the ticket would be stronger with the both of us. And so I think, like I said, because students have resonated with the ticket and the platforms that we've spoken on, it would just be such an honor.
All right. Now I'm going to ask you a few questions just to clarify some statements made at the debate, just for the students listening. So in the debate, we asked your running mate, of course now Vice President Maya Porzio, about your plan to advocate for a safe transition to normalcy related to COVID-19. Now she talked about, quote, having a kind of signage, making sure that students, if they are sick, can feel that they can still come to class wearing a mask and not be embarrassed that they are the only ones there wearing a mask, kind of break that stigma of, oh, you're wearing a mask, you have COVID, end quote. Now, that being said, can you just clarify what she meant by this? Because some of the implications show, do you intend to advocate for students to come to class and they test positive for COVID-19?
No, okay, to clarify, I think that we just want to break the stigma around masks and around COVID on campus, continuing to push the Garnet and Vaxxed initiative that student government was so influential in doing, and continuing to have testing on this campus, and if students are feeling sick, encouraging them to stay home. But if they're uncomfortable with being in a classroom with students who don't have masks on, breaking that stigma, like I said, to wear a mask if the closed space is uncomfortable for anyone.
All right, could you just clarify what you mean by that stigma behind wearing a mask?
Yeah, so like you said, just the difference in the feelings around, if you and I are talking and having a conversation, we're at distance, we may not feel the need to wear a mask, but in a big group setting, that's just that idea around and the perceptions around, oh, well, if someone's sitting there with a mask, they must feel uncomfortable breaking that, and that's what she was talking about with the signage, just encouraging positive messages around this campus to make every student feel welcomed and feel safe.
All right, that makes a lot more sense. I appreciate that clarification.
Yes, of course.
Now I'm going to clarify another thing in the debate that was directed towards you. We talked about your parents and their positions within the university and in the state of South Carolina. I had asked, quote, what do you say to students who are worried that your parents' positions of power will present a conflict of interest and skew how you represent the student body, end quote. Now, to summarize your answer, just so that we can recall that, you talked about how the position of student body president is not a voting member of the board of trustees, which of course is a fact, and thus poses no conflict of interest for you. Now, that being said, if you are to be student body president, do you plan to fight for a student vote on the board of trustees, even though that spot would create a conflict of interest?
So the student vote on the board is something that has been advocated for many years, and that's something I would continue to advocate for the next president to come after me, because as we know, big changes like this take time, and so it's something I would push forward, absolutely, but unfortunately I don't know if it would happen in my term, and so I would continue to advocate for the next president.
All right, well, thank you so much. Now, just while you're here, is there anything else you'd like to say to the student body as they enter voting tomorrow morning?
I would just thank the student body for their support and for all the encouragement that we've seen as a ticket. And I would encourage everyone to go out and vote again in the election, because we are so excited to have the opportunity to represent the student body.
All right, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
All right, I am now joined by Gurujjal Roopra off of the Catalyst ticket. And again, we're just going to kick things right off. How are you feeling going into voting tomorrow?
So incredibly grateful. I think that as somebody who has seen, campaigns since I was a freshman, and I've got great experiences and mentors, it's so insane to be in this position now, and we have a team that has just absolutely rallied, and I think the student body more than anything has been very impacted. I mean, the conversations that I've had with people just randomly coming up to me and telling me how much they've enjoyed this campaigning season and how represented they feel. It makes everything so worth it, and I'm so excited.
There have been two very hard-fought campaigns, both in Green Street, on Instagram, everywhere. Yes. So I'll have to ask, why do you think you deserve a vote over your competitor?
I think that for me, it's very important for every single student to exercise their right to vote. but also to make a very educated vote and to look thoroughly through a candidate, not only in their experiences within the student body, but also, or specifically within student government, but within the student body. And that goes to say, like, not even for student government elections, but beyond. And so, I think that I have had some really, really, really amazing experiences within SG, within the student body, within the Columbia community. And I think that it's because of the experiences that I've had that I have been able to engage with every single pocket of campus. And not only in a professional sense, but even in my personal life. And so, I think I'm very equipped to be represented and advocate for students. But I also think that I've made it very clear that I'm eager to give students the space and platform to advocate for themselves.
No, of course. And now I'm just going to move into clarifying some things you've mentioned at the debate, just so that students have a clear idea of what you meant by certain things. So in the debate, you talked about getting that student vote on the Board of Trustees.
Yes.
Now, can you walk me through specifically how you plan to get this done and how one vote against the other 22 would make a difference?
So honestly, to be frank with you, I think that I'm sure you know that the student vote on the Board of Trustees has been something that's been talked about consistently by student government and by student leadership. And so I think that for me, the biggest thing this year is to set the precedent that this is what the student body wants to see. I'm not going to come up here and promise you that I'm going to get a vote because, quite frankly, we don't know that that's going to happen, and I'm not going to make a false promise. But what I can say is that this year we have been put in a very fortunate position to where our new president-elect, Professor Emeritus, did have a student vote on his Board of Trustees at the University of Illinois. We do have a plethora of SEC schools that also have a student vote on their Board of Trustees. And I think that more so than that one vote holding up to 22 others, I think that it's important that students are represented in that room because that's what they're here for. That is who they are here to serve the student body. And so the student body deserves a voice, and they deserve to have a say in what changes are made. And I think that my biggest goal is setting that precedent, ensuring that Professor Emeritus is on our side and knows what we want and what we expect from our administration.
Of course, and thank you for that clarification there.
Of course.
Now, shifting into another topic in the debate, we talked about parking. You and the other presidential candidates were asked about it, and while your competitors, they mentioned like carpooling or expanding the shuttle and busing system. You specifically brought up partnering with the City of Columbia on using their public garages for students. Now, this would add more spaces. How can you ensure that the pricing would get better, especially with another party involved? Like, how can you ensure that not just more space is made, but it's more affordable?
Right. So I don't know actually if anybody has ever done the math. I did because I didn't want to pay $800 for a spot in Bull Street Garage. It is actually cheaper for you, depending on how many classes you have, cheaper for you to go and pay hourly at Bull Street than buy an $800 parking pass. And so I completely agree with affordability and accessibility being an issue with with parking here on our campus. And so I think that for me, I know plenty of students who park in those parking garages whose rates are cheaper than what Bull Street or Pendleton or other garages might be. And so I think that rather than being concerned with parking going up, I think that if we can manage to keep those parking rates for the passes the same that they are right now, and partner with the City of Columbia to do so, and also clarify with them that these are what your rates were before, and while we are partnering with you now, we expect those to stay the same. Just making that clarification. I don't think that that's going to be as much of an issue, hopefully. But I think that it's a very unique idea to kind of fix this problem that we all consistently talk about all the time because, quite frankly, it needs to be fixed.
No, of course. And now, is there anything else you'd like to say to the student body as they enter voting tomorrow morning?
Yeah, I touched on this briefly before, but be an informed voter, first and foremost, and at the end of the day, make sure that you vote. It is so imperative that our student body is a part of these elections. I know time and time again, people feel as though student government's role on campus isn't as impactful as it needs to be. But that is why the student body is so important, that we are in this year of change and growth, and we either rise up to the occasion or we continue to be disappointed with where our university is heading. And so I think that it's time that the students step up and they kind of take control of their Carolina experience, and I'm really looking forward to going towards that journey with them.
All right, well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Stay tuned Will and I will be giving you more information on voting. Thank you again to our candidates for speaking to us today, and to you for tuning in to SGTV's Runoff Special.
Voting opens tomorrow morning, March 1st at 9 a.m. on www.sc.edu/elections, and it will close at 5 p.m. on March 2nd, that's Wednesday. Students must vote again in the runoff for that vote to count.
Now, if you still want to learn more about the candidates, take a look at the coverage on SGTV's YouTube and SGTV News 4's Twitter, as well as the articles published by the Daily Gamecock.
That being said, SGTV will be covering the runoff election results, which will be announced on March 2nd at 5:30 p.m. on Green Street. For SGTV News 4, I'm Will Kronsberg.
And I'm Calista Pushman. Have a great night, Carolina. Forever to thee.